downtown. I'll partly not.
The cases are.
Yeah.
Better. Yeah, I can do that.
Your street sweeping machine. Turn into one of those Roombas. Ones with that.
That's what we'll do. We'll just get a robot and turn it loose downtown. Yeah.
By contact process.
Was he seeing it?
But
When was this? I mean, a lot of it's pants too.
No, there was discussion, they need to make this not idiot proof. That's about where I'm like, well, that's about. That is. Good morning, everyone. I would like to call this meeting of the Sylva Board of Commissioners to order. The first thing on our agenda is to approve our agenda. Do I have a motion to do that?
so we approve the agenda.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is to approve our consent agenda.
Gotta vote.
Got to vote. Thank you, everybody. Is there any discussion other than that? All those in favor say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Thank you. That's unanimously approved. Next is the consent agenda. You had that in your packet. There's quite a bit in it, so I hope everybody's looked at it. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Motion is approved. Now is the time for public comment. If we have anyone here that wishes to make any public comment. See anyone? So we will move on to our mayor's report and the others. My report is that I really don't have anything to report. So I will move on to the commissioners. Mary.
Sure. I have three things to report about. One, I'm really pleased to learn that one of the 107 businesses that's going to be displaced in the future has relocated on Skyland Drive, and they have secured the Spanish style house that I'm sure everyone's familiar with. So it's a professional office as of a few weeks ago. So I think that's great news. We want to include or encourage our 107 businesses to relocate in the town limits. And this is a very positive step, in my opinion, towards that happening. So I hope others will follow suit. Before the last meeting, horticulturist Adam Bigelow had sent us all an email suggesting that he spearhead a project fixing our native plant situation in front of the town hall. He is willing to spearhead the project at little to no charge to the town. And I think that that would be a nice gesture for the town to do to promote native plants. And I would like to see that on a future agenda if possible for discussion. And my third item is about 2/3 up Landis Road sidewalk, just before the upper parking lot entrance down to Lazy Hiker. It seems to be a considerable slope in the sidewalks. And I didn't know if there was POW money, ADA money, or if we could even just do like a neon stripe or something to alert people of that shift. That's all.
We'll take a look at that for sure.
Thank you, Mary. David.
No.
Ben.
Okay, great. Good morning, everybody. Just a couple things I wanted to, after our last meeting, I just wanted to thank everybody that came out to the meeting. It was really nice to have public participating in their local government. And I would love to see more participation. We always welcome emails. I try and respond to all the emails I get and comments. Again, we are representing the residents of Sylva. So please, residents of Sylva, continue to reach out, continue to come to our meetings, watch them online. And thank you. Other thing that came out of that meeting a couple weeks ago, and I've seen it come up before, unfortunately. Sometimes Western Carolina University, whether it's the students and drinking or the roads or whatever, sometimes it seems to be a little bit of a punching bag. And I just wanted to remind everybody out there that Western Carolina University is a total asset for us in this area. We have, it's the largest employer in the county. Look across the Western North Carolina counties. Typically, it's the school system that's the largest employer, but we have Western Carolina University here. And not only does it bring jobs, it brings people to this area and it keeps people in this area. I know a lot of people in this room have benefited from going through the Western Carolina University system. And I just wanted to kind of give them a shout out. It's an important thing for us to have in the area, and I'm glad they're there. Last thing is the current state of COVID. We are at like a 10% test positivity rate, which, given that we were close to 40, within the last month or so, that's a huge improvement. Cases continue to go down. Things are definitely looking better. No one can predict this thing, but looking back at how things have gone, we're probably going to get some type of spike at some point in time. So I just encourage folks to be careful out there. And one of the biggest things is there are a lot of folks that got both of their shots and have not gotten their booster. So folks that have been vaccinated with the 2 doses, please get out and take that third step and get the booster, which is really just the third shot of a series of 3. So I hope folks will take advantage of that while the cases are low. And that's all I got.
Thank you, Ben. Right.
Hello. So just one thing on my list was I was happy to see that the TDA is putting out some funding for this granting cycle, $500,000, I believe. So thank you, Paige, for emailing me the application. And I think that that could go a long way towards augmenting some of the things that we're talking about in town. Thank you.
Natalie,
I have nothing to report.
thank you. Next, we'll move on to the manager's report.
Good morning, everyone. First off, I want to let you know that Mike Beck's mother passed away yesterday, if you haven't heard, so please send him your condolences. For the budget update, department budget worksheets are due March the 4th. Please keep sending me your budget priorities if you haven't already. Our next budget work session is March the 24th, immediately after our meeting. March the 11th at 1, the TDA is dedicating Pinnacle Park as the certified nature forest therapy trail. They've had a sign made, Public Works will install it, and someone from that program, along with the TDA and Dr. Mark Ellison that's assisted with that process, will be there. So let me know if you all are able to come. It would be great to have some representation from the board. So Allen Street, I emailed you that the $3 million for playground equipment, that grant, the scope of work was to what all we want to do as far as improvements to the park. We need to get a technical correction from the legislature in order to do that. And that's a technical correction to the budget bill, but other jurisdictions need it also. So I imagine that should happen fairly quickly, but that's what would let us really improve the park as far as pavilion, restrooms. I submitted everything we talked about, sidewalks, new equipment, new picnic tables. So if that goes through, that will really improve as far as stabilization. And the good thing about this is we've had the engineers quote things like the retaining wall repair, that we wouldn't have initially had the money to do. So stay tuned. I'll let you know as that continues to be updated. As far as the public restroom, after our last budget work session, we contacted Odell to see if it was possible to do it on Spring Street, and it is. He believes it can be done with 2 on the Main Street side and 2 on the Mill Street side. So once we get the grant contract out, that scope of work has been approved, but I'll bring it back before you. I want to see what the requirements are as far as bidding and that type of thing. So it's good to know that it is a possibility. And as far as employment updates, Zach Sorrells has been promoted to crew leader in Public Works, so please congratulate Zach. He'll do an excellent job. Connor Nolan will start as a maintenance technician on Monday. He's from Waynesville and recently worked for WNC Tents. Christopher Cobb has been hired as detective and started last week. He previously worked for the Fletcher Police Department. Next week, Monday and Tuesday, we'll have Becky Veazey from the MAPS group here, conducting employee interviews and an orientation on the salary study and pay and classification plan. The RFP for the master trail plan the Eastern Band put out is for Black Rock and Shut-in Creek has been extended to March the 1st. And the new dates for the Essentials of Municipal Government in Asheville are April the 13th and 14th. Once that registration opens, we will need to move our April the 14th meeting to April the 21st. And as far as the fire department, I'm still in the process of contacting the league and other managers who have fire departments that have transitioned from volunteer to split paid volunteer departments in the last 5 to 10 years. We're presenting this request to the county on March the 10th, but depending on the results of that meeting, I want to discuss the policy and budget implications with you all and hopefully look at a consultant that could give us some advice on how to implement this transition, because it's a huge transition for the fire department and for the town. That's all I have.
Thank you, Paige. Are there questions?
Do we have like a preliminary layout for the Allen's, the Bryson Park? Like just the park itself? I know we have the studies from the law.
No, the engineer I think it was November when, or it must have been before that when they presented to the board, they didn't recommend opening the park until the slope was stabilized.
I'm just wondering about like, are we gonna reconfigure that park so that the parking is on the other side or those kind of.
Parking area expansion is one of the things we've asked the engineers to look at and scope.
And since we're talking about it, Jake, would you mind asking DOT to maybe clean up the slide down there? There's a lot of mud and just at the very bottom where it's on the road, and if they could push back those barriers, they do that periodically, but it's getting pretty nasty down there.
Yeah, I want to work with their engineers on that because the consensus after the last time that they did it was that they're making the destabilization worse by removing that material. At that time, they expressed that they would likely close that lane temporarily with, I don't know if you've seen the temporary turn like traffic signals. So they put a temporary red light kind of on either side and run. If it gets so bad that it comes out in that lane, they'll close the lane before they undermine the slope anymore.
Okay.
I'll be happy to re-explore it.
But if they're able, even just like the kind of, there's a lot of like garbage and mud on the outside of the.
Oh, yeah.
Right now, even like you putting that up probably wouldn't be that big of a deal. Okay. Oh, and since we're kind of talking about that area too, hey, do you know anything about all that fiber optic that's going in along Chipper Curve?
Do you know?
Jake?
It's either Optimum or Charter putting in, just trying to expand into the area.
Okay.
Any other questions of Paige? Thank you, Paige. It sounds like we have a lot going on. And I wanted to really thank you and Amanda and Lynn for all the work that y'all have done on all of this stuff. I know these projects we have coming up are there's a lot of paperwork that goes with them, and y'all as attest to in our packet, but thank you all for your hard work. Next is Jay, Public Works.
Morning, everybody. I've approached the DOT about temporarily closing the turn lane at Dunkin' Donuts to allow no left turns in or out of that establishment after another particularly nasty wreck there past Wednesday. Our 5600 will hopefully solve a lot of those issues, but we're still several years down the road from that. So my request has been sent along to traffic engineers in the division and the region. So they're reviewing that request, and I hope to hear something back shortly. We got to find something to do right there in the short term. The Keener Cemetery mowing contract is currently open for bids, and those bids are due by March 11th. We have received our boom mower. I really appreciate that. It's been amazing already. We've done a lot of right-of-way trimming on Falls Circle, Finch Street, East Sylva Circle, and Allen Street. So that's really improved our efficiency on that. When stuff starts growing, it's going to improve even more. We're starting a hazard tree removal project today at Pinnacle Park. There's a neighboring property close to the trailhead right there that's got 3 dead ash trees that are on the Pinnacle property, but there's significant risk of property damage to that private homeowner. We're doing this with Main Springs review and approval. So that'll be hopefully finished today. If not today, then tomorrow, weather dependent. Additionally, Public Works is going to be conducting routine trail maintenance at both Black Rock and Pinnacle Park. We've got assault on Black Rock coming up on March the 19th. Like Paige said, we've hired Connor Noland as a maintenance technician. He starts Monday. We're going to be happy to have him on board. And lastly, I'd like to thank Garrett Craig and Ward's Plumbing and Heating. Garrett organized the downtown litter pickup this past Sunday, and Ward's will be conducting a day of service at Bridge Park Saturday, March the 5th. We really appreciate their commitment to keeping our community clean. There's no questions. That's all I have.
Is the R5600 plans at 100% now?
No, 75%.
So let's say, okay, thanks.
Thank you, Jake, and thanks to your team for all the work. Y'all get a lot done for a really small team, so thank you very much.
Very well.
Next is the police report, and Chief Patton is out of town at a class. Paige, do you have any information?
I emailed you his report.
Okay, so thank you. Everybody got that. Next is the fire department, and I don't think there's a report since Mike had a death in his family, and I'll send my condolences to him and his father, all of his family. Main Street for the death.
Good morning. Thank you to everybody who was participating in the public hearing that we had. I know it was a little emotional at times, but I think it was great, like Ben said, having everyone part of the political process. So a social district task force is going to meet on the 2nd of March to discuss 5 key items of concern from the public hearing. We took quite a few notes, and to set the agenda for a permit holder input session and a non-permit holder input session. After the sessions have taken place, the task force will refine the details for implementing the social district. So we're going to take our time and really evaluate everything. And the Main Street Conference is virtual this year, and they have a social district session on the 8th of March at 10 a.m. So that task force and anyone who's interested can come here to Town Hall. And I'm going to put that on the screen so that everybody can watch that without having to sign up for the entire conference. Today, I'm representing the Main Street Association at the SEC Job Fair, where students can apply for downtown jobs with a single resume. That's kind of been our strategy going forward with students. We're doing that with Western Carolina as well. They can send in one application for all jobs, check their point of interest, and then we route it to the folks who are hiring. Greening Up the Mountains, that's going to be on the 23rd of April. The planning is going well. We're working on a modified layout that would allow more social distancing between booths. So that's allowing us to have fewer booth spaces, but we still have 114 available. We have a little over 40 applications so far. The deadline for those applications is March 15th. But you'll start to hear radio ads and see articles in the newspapers. And we have a full lineup of main stage bands for the festival. And then lastly, the Sylva Brew Hop will be April 8th through the 10th. This year, we're using the TDA's Band Wango system to administer the event. So the tickets, the map, the sales, the check-in will all be virtual. And this will allow us to spread it out over the entire weekend to lessen crowding inside, considering the pandemic. And tickets will be capped at 288, since that's the number of glasses that we purchased in 2020 when we had to cancel the event. The participating hop stops are Innovation Brewing, Balsam Falls, Lazy Hiker, Nantahala, and the Paper Mill, and tickets will be $35. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bernadette, and thanks for your work on all of this. I read the article in the paper and also the press release that you did, and that helped. I think will help people know that we're still working on it, that it's a long process. Is there a planning board report?
Only that they met the 17th and recommended approval of the land use plan and then again of the zoning ordinance.
Thank you. What's up?
So, okay, reminder that our annual meeting is March 1st at noon, and it's on Zoom. It's not in person again, but if you could log in and watch that, you'll learn a lot about Floss's history and what we're working on right now, all of our capital projects, and overview of our budget. And then we recently had our committee appointments. Congratulations, Jake Scott, you're on the Water and Sewer Projects Committee now. I'm on there with you. We meet once a year. It's just a review of our capital improvement plan, and good chance for the town to bring up any future needs that they foresee that they want added to that capital improvement plan. And that's all I have for this lesson.
Thank you. That ends our report session, so we will move on to new business. Before we start with our agenda items, I would like to recognize Karen Mallow and the Withers Ravenel. And I believe you're going to give us maybe an update on some changes that were made with the planning board from what came out of our last meeting. Yes. Do that. Yeah. Yes. Step up there.
Thank you. It's nice to be here in person. I usually get to see y'all on a screen, so this is kind of a nice change for me to be here. So we just wanted to go over some of the changes that were brought up at the planning board meeting. And the planning board did address a lot of the comments and suggestions that you all had made or that were brought up at the public hearing. Now,
Matt, point it up.
oh, up there. This one. Okay. So here, it's working. Okay, it was sleeping. Okay, so basically, again, this is just an overview. So we've seen a lot of these slides, so we're going to either just gloss over them or whatever, but I wanted to give a background about how we got to this point today. Talk about the land use plan, because again, that needs to be adopted by this board moving forward, and then how that future land use plan will play into future projects. The zoning and subdivision ordinance, obviously what we're talking about. What's new that came out of the public hearing, and then what changes came out of the planning board meeting. Again, moving forward, and then our adoption items, and then our future discussion items. So how we got here. So the outdated ordinance were identified probably 5 years ago, I guess 5 or 6 years ago, Paige had mentioned, like starting in like 2015, 16. And that started the process of that ordinance assessment. Withers was hired in 2020. I believe I joined in late 2020. So as far as I know, the contract was already started by the time I joined. We were hired to implement that ordinance assessment, create the zoning and subdivision ordinance that you have seen as a draft. The land use plan draft was completed by Friction Shift at about the same time, maybe even a little bit before that. And then that draft was finished in like end of 2020, right when COVID hit. So monthly updates and meetings have been taking place with the planning board, this board, or both. As you know, we had some workshops together on both the zoning and subdivision ordinance updates. Full final drafts were provided of that ordinance to both boards in December of 2021. The planning board recommended approval in January. They also then reapproved it last week when they had the comments from the public hearing that was on February 10th. And just like you said, planning board recommended the approval on that date. So we're going to just talk about the land use plan because again, that it needs to be adopted. This was brought up and these slides were mentioned at the public hearing. So we're just going to breeze through them pretty quickly. As you saw that the plan was prepared in 2020 by Friction Shift Projects and Turner Consulting. The vision statement for that land use plan is that Sylva in 2040 is a vibrant town with a built environment that complements the natural beauty of the surrounding mountains and streams. Residents and visitors are connected to high quality housing, employment, shopping, and entertainment opportunities through a network of safe, multimodal, and transportation corridors. The plan for Sylva will be used as a guide. All land use plans are basically guides that help make future land use decisions. They prepare and implement ordinances, influence the rate and location of future growth. And it outlines the vision for the community and addressing that future land use. All the land use decisions brought before the town of Sylva will be guided by this vision and the principles, goals, and policies in the plan. The plan outlines the plan outlines the vision of how Sylva will evolve and change over the next 20 years. And the overall goal of the plan is to outline a roadmap that will maintain Sylva as a healthy, sustainable, and desirable place to live. So one of the things that comes out of a land use plan, that's not on the slide here, but anytime there's a rezoning in the town, the rezoning or change in text amendment of your zoning ordinance will come and get compared to this land use plan. And the zoning amendment will say whether it is in compliance or consistent with the land use plan or not. So it does tie in and you do use it throughout the next 20 years. So the plan makeup is community context, key drivers, character areas, mapping, and goals and policies. So those are the items that are in the table of contents. The community context is basically your demographic data that provides background information for the study, tells you what is going on in the community in the past and future growth, where they see those things happening in what parts of the town. The key drivers that drove this plan were the reimagining the commercial corridors, providing diversity in your housing choices, multimodal mobility, which is basically your transportation, and zoning code modernization, which is why we're here today. Talks about character areas and mapping, and we'll see the future land use map next, and then goes over the goals and policies. And the goals and policies are what we ask for you to make that statement on consistency is with these goals and policies. And some of these goals and policies were taken and intricately wrapped into the zoning and subdivision ordinance. So maintain downtown Sylva as a unique, historic, vibrant, and attractive local regional destination. Establish 107 corridor as a model corridor in southwestern North Carolina. Maintain a healthy balance in land uses between residential generators, workforce nodes, and park and open space. Future development in Sylva incorporates appropriate levels of density and design to support increased housing options, the viability of neighborhoods, commercial and overall long-term neighborhood sustainability. The physical character and identity of Sylva is maintained through a high degree of aesthetic and quality development. And last, new development and redevelopment in Sylva incorporate creative design. So again, we'll look at real quickly at this future land use map and then how this will eventually correlate with updates to the zoning map. So in the light olive colors, those are what right now is between your LDR and your MDR. Those are considered infill developments in the future land use plan. So we would see as we move forward that this is where infill will take place. Orange are your rural residential, which is mostly your LDR neighborhoods. Aqua is your urban neighborhoods. So that's again, where we would expect to see higher densities, walkability to your downtown and to your service nodes. Purple is your commercial, again, along the 107 corridor. Red is the downtown district. Beige is medical near the hospital. Mint is Skyland mixed use. And then olive, the darker olive are your parks. And then moving on to the zoning and subdivision ordinance. So these are what's new from our meeting. So after the Board of Commissioners meeting, you should have the last meeting and the public hearing. You should have gotten a memo that outlined the 210 draft. This is what went to planning board. This was, these were changes from that draft, and this is what created the 217 draft. So Appendix A was updated, the intent was updated to include native designation in that intent. Article 4, we changed the district conversion table to indicate PUD designations moving to HDR or CD. So the difference there is that anything that was zoned PUD went to an HDR, and then anything that was developed as a PUD will go to a conditional district. So you don't lose the conditions that were approved with the zoning. Article 4, we talked about revising those building heights. So there was an increase in the multifamily and HDR from 40 to 40 feet from 35. We decreased it in the general business to 50 to make it a little bit more consistent. No heights greater than 70 feet. So anything that had a building height greater than 70 was reduced it's not as a minimum, as a maximum for the fire department. Article 5, we revised the agricultural levels. We took out the generic descriptions that were in the uses and we matched those with the definitions that were in Article 10. So now you'll see in Article 5 that it's a definition rather than like a description. We also revised the accessory structures to allow for a maximum of 500 square feet or 25% of the building area of the principal structure so that an individual is not penalized for having a smaller house or a smaller main structure. Also in Article 5, the agricultural use for a second, we also removed all references to the chicken and beekeeping and directed planning board to conduct further study, and you'll see that on our future study list. One of the things I did want to mention with Article 5, actually before we go that one, with the chicken and beekeeping, the town did not have any current regulations. So when we, I know we were directed to keep what was existing. So the only thing that is existing is in your code of ordinances in your animals section of the code of ordinances. So you'll see in the revision that all we did is reference the code of ordinances for now, and then kept it with the PS so we don't have to change the table later. But once planning board comes up with the restrictions, or if you want to put any on them, those will just go in under that standard section. Sorry, my glasses keep fogging. I can't see anything. Okay, Article 5. We also removed the separation distances between bars, private clubs, and nightclubs from churches and schools. And the reason this is because, and the same thing with removing the regulations for kitchens and serving food with alcohol. These are ABC requirements that come when you get a permit from the alcohol board. So we felt that it wasn't necessary to regulate them within the zoning ordinance. And I'll just make a comment on the separation. It's not a requirement to be separated. What they do is when they issue a permit, they make that one of their considerations. So they just look at how close you are to a school or a church. So it's not a it's more of a recommendation than it is actually a requirement. Article 7, we removed the ability of the zoning administrator to replace native plants with non-native species and indicated that native plants must always be used. Article 7, also, we prohibited upward facing lighting, so that is specifically taken out. And just one of the things we did see now that is in the newer revision, it's not just the US flag, it's also the North Carolina state flag, but it is only those two. Article 7, reduce the isotope candle measurements at the property line for parking lots, so that to reduce more of that glow. And then requiring a certain temperature of lighting to ensure warm colors, not bright white. So it really is those warm colors rather than the cool colors. Okay, so then these are the changes that came out of the planning board meeting. These were changes from that 217 draft, which created the 224 draft. Basically, section 5.3 use table. There were missing dashed lines in the cemetery uses, so we needed to add those back in. That's in the LDR, MDR, and I'm sorry, that's the HDR. They were inadvertently left off, but those are not permitted in those residential zones. Self-storage and warehouse was there, but we didn't have any lettering in them. So those are going to be permitted with supplemental standards in the GB and the industrial zoning districts. And then parks was, again, inadvertently left off in the downtown business. So parks will be allowed in the supplemental standards in the downtown business. One of the things that came out of the public hearing was that people felt they could not repair their garage, their cars in their driveways. That was intentionally to be commercial uses. So we just clarified that by putting commercial in parentheses at the end of that. That was never the intent to regulate someone on their private property. That's simply for commercial businesses. And then some of the changes that we made to the lighting section, we made reference now to reducing sky glow as well. So that is an effect of keeping that night sky. Again, we mentioned this earlier, prohibited lighting to not allow any upward lighting except for flags. And again, it's only the US flag and the North Carolina state flag. And the location of lighting, we indicated that fixtures shall be placed to provide uniform distribution of light downward and to avoid intense lighting that produces excessive glare and sky glow. And then in shielding, we made a specific line item. We clarified this by saying building lighting and landscape lighting shall be located, aimed, and shielded so that direct illumination is focused exclusively on the building facade, plantings, or other site features and shall not extend upward to the night sky. Subsection C reads upward facing light shall be prohibited except when lighting the US or North Carolina state flag at night as required.
I have a question about the lighting.
Sure.
So does that apply to like the streetlights, like Duke, or is it just our own? Like,
In the ordinance,
Just a,
in
yeah.
the ordinance, it's anything except street lighting.
Okay,
The street lighting is by Duke, so generally we don't regulate it.
Right.
The town doesn't regulate it. But they're moving in that direction as well. So, and I think most of it is shielded. Unfortunately, it's more of a safety concern, so they have it, but this will apply to any other type of lighting, building mounted, pedestrian lighting, any other types of light. And then the newest edits, these came out of some comments and emails that came to us, specifically on table 5.1. The other ones were just spelling errors. But fitness and dance studios, these were not marked as permitted. So we indicated permitted in the industrial district. Amphitheater, schools, emergency services, we added the dash in the use standards column because that wasn't there. Libraries, we marked as not permitted in LDR, MDR, and HDR. Schools marked not permitted in DTB. And then essential class services 3, not permitted in all districts except industrial. And by not permitted, that just means that the dash was missing in those boxes. So it's not like we're trying to, we just missed dashes. Okay, moving forward. Okay, so what we're asking today is approve or deny the ordinance to approve the land use plan. You should see a draft ordinance in your packets. Make the statement as to consistency with the land use plan and reasonableness of the zoning map changes. That's to say that the zoning ordinance, zoning and subdivision ordinance would be consistent with the land use plan and reasonable. And then to approve or deny the ordinance to approve the zoning and subdivision ordinance. And it actually asks that ordinance actually repeals the existing current ordinance and approves the new one. And then in the future, address items that were not part of this project, such as updating zoning map, discussing additional uses. We have that list later. Revisit the ordinance to see what is working and not working, and then to amend the ordinance if needed as you move forward. Okay, and then all I have are the next 4 slides are basically the ordinance to adopt in case anyone was watching wanted to see what those ordinances are. So my presentation is done unless you have any more questions or comments.
Any questions, Karen? Thank you again for all of your work on this, your whole team. And I know it's been a process, but the outcome is great. So our other ordinances had Band-Aids on them for 20-something years. So
Well, it's been a pleasure to work with all of you, and I appreciate the kind words and all of the input and spelling corrections and everything else that you have provided to us, the guidance. This is truly your document. And I really, again, hope we could, make those changes as you guys move forward so that they keep addressing anything that changes.
it is sort of a living document. When we discover something that we don't have, that was probably unintentional, then we can address that with a text amendment or.
And John, you're in good hands with John, so and Paige, so I'm sure they will address any of those concerns as they continue to arise.
And thank you, John, for all of your work and implementing this, I guess, in the future. So.
Quite welcome.
And I'll just leave this up there in case we need to. Thank you.
All right, we will move on to our new business now. And the first thing is appointment to the Southwest Commission NC Home Consortium Board of Directors. Paige, do you have?
Yes, so this appointment needs to be made today. It doesn't have to be a board member, but I feel if it's not a board member, it should be someone on staff that can keep the board updated on this. And this is the housing arm that Southwestern Commission created in 2020 that handles the formula federal grants for housing. Each local government gets to make an appointment to this board.
Thank you. Are there nominations?
Yeah, Linda, I think you'd be an excellent fit for this. You're serving on the housing committee with the county and Paige. So I would nominate Linda Sossman to serve on the NC Home Consortium Board of Directors.
Thank you. Any other nominations? Then I'll close the nominations and ask for a vote. All of those in favor signify by saying aye, raising your hand.
Aye.
Thank you. And I asked Paige if no one else did that, if I could serve on that. So I think I work with the Southwest Commission now on the Transportation Advisory Committee and several other things. So the housing, as we've said, is such an important thing for this area. So I think we're all wanting to see more, and I appreciate your vote. I will do a good job. Thank you. All right, now we will move on to new business and other new business. And the first item for the ordinances is to approve the plan for Sylva 2040 land use plan. Do I have a motion that we approve this?
So I would like to make a motion to approve an ordinance to allow the adoption of the land use plan titled The Plan for Sylva 2040 Land Use Plan, Town of Sylva, North Carolina.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there any discussion? Then all those in favor signify by raising your hand and saying aye. Aye. Thank you. Next is to approve the consistency and reasonableness of the statement for the zoning and subdivision ordinance. Do I have a motion for that?
I would like to make a motion to approve the consistency and reasonableness statement for the zoning and subdivision ordinance of the town of Sylva, North Carolina as presented.
Thank you, Natalie. Any discussion? Then all those in favor signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion is approved. The fourth item is to approve the ordinance to repeal chapter 31 and 38 of the Town of Sylva Code of Ordinances. That's the old ones. And to adopt the new zoning map and subdivision ordinance. Do I have a motion for that?
I would like to make a motion to approve an ordinance repealing the zoning ordinance, chapter 38 of the town of Sylva and the subdivision ordinance, chapter 31 of the town of Sylva, North Carolina, to adopt the zoning and subdivision ordinance of the town of Sylva, North Carolina.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion is approved. So our new changes have been approved. And again, thank you to John and to Karen and everybody for the work on this.
Yeah.
It was
That was a
amazing.
lot of work. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. That is all of our new business. We have a closed session. Do I hear a motion to go into closed session?
Make a motion, we go into closed session, pursuant to general statute 143-318-11A3, consult with attorney.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand. Thank you. We'll now go into closed session.